For context, I go to school full-time, work almost full-time, and do all the house duties. I also cook every night for my husband and I. My husband's a picky eater, so I always ask him what he wants, and I make it for both of us. Very rarely will we eat quick meals like a frozen pizza. I always make him homemade food. During the summer, I am taking 9 units while working as an academic mentor, teaching students over the summer to prepare them for their next year's courses. This obviously requires extensive prep time for lecture planning and creating homework assignments for each one. I'm taking 2 6-week courses and 1 12-week. Right now I am in an engineering class and a statistics class, which requires a lot of lecture time and study time. A few weeks ago, I was going to get some important paperwork done in LA, dual citizenship related. This appointment in LA was early in the morning, and I had a flight at around 5 a.m., which requires me to wake up at 2 a.m. to get there on time. This appointment was scheduled on a Friday. I work 9-6 on Thursday. I also have lectures to watch, and since it's a 6-week course, each session takes about 4 hours of lecture. I have 4 sessions a week. So I got home at around 6:30 the Thursday before my appointment in LA and began watching my lectures and taking notes. Also, I should mention now, my husband only works. He works about 25-30 hours a week. I asked him if he could take us to order takeout this night. He replied with, "Why?" And I explained to him I had about 3 more hours of lecture to get through and had to wake up at 2 a.m., and that I worked an 8-hour, so I was already exhausted. He seemed to still not understand why I want to get takeout, so I said, "Can you just take us to get something simple like McDonald's? It's super close." He replied, "Well, I want spaghetti." Wouldn't it take the same amount of time getting McDonald's than you cooking spaghetti? I make my spaghetti and meat sauce from scratch. I didn't want to argue with him after everything, so I just made it. He didn't even know I was upset until the next day. I explained to him that I never ask for a break or really anything from him in general. So when I ask for a break, I expect to get it. I ended up getting about an hour of sleep that night with more assignments to do the next day still. Fast forward to a few days ago. Also, remember how my husband is a picky eater? I never get to make what I want for dinner because he just complains about it. I found a pasta recipe that looks so good and have been debating on making it. And I finally said I was going to do it. My husband likes pasta, so I thought it would be perfect. I told him I was excited to try this and that I was going to go shopping for the ingredients after he left for work. He said, okay. I went shopping and got everything. I also pay for all the groceries. And he texted me a couple of hours later saying, "Are you still making pasta? We should get McDonald's tonight," I was like, and said, "Do you really not want my cooking so bad that you want McDonald's?" And he said, "Not what I meant." And I said, "What did you mean then?" And he said, "Why do you get mad at me for not taking you to McDonald's, then get mad for offering to take you to McDonald's?" I explained to him exactly why I was upset and how these situations were different. Last time I asked for a break. And this time I was excited to make one dinner that I wanted. And it just so happens it's the same night he wants to take me to McDonald's. We haven't talked in a few days and need some advice or guidance. I especially need ways for him to understand why I am upset. During this time we were house and pet, sitting for his family. And I just moved everything back home after he told me, "If you want to get mad at me for offering to take you to McDonald's, go home." There are a lot of other factors that go into this. Like, for example, he doesn't even help me clean up the kitchen after I cook. I feel like his mom and not his partner or wife. Now for an update. I went over last night to get our pet bunnies that we took to his parents' house. He was there. As I was packing, all he did was watch and ask, "Why are you taking the bunnies?" And I said that I didn't trust him to take care of them the way I do and have been. He said he has, and I asked if he even changed their litter box once, which I do every day, and he was silent. I said exactly and packed my stuff. I let him know as I was leaving. I said, "I'm not going to talk to you tonight about our situation. I will not be the one to initiate because I only did in the past. I want you to come to me, come to our house, and want to fix things like I do. So you're going to have to show up and be open for talking. You can come tomorrow night," which is today. I worked again today and had a lot of schoolwork. I wished early to have time to talk to him. He went out with his friends. It's currently 9:35 p.m. and is still at his parents' house. I really thought he would care enough about me to just show up. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Why can't your husband make his own spaghetti when he wants it? Why isn't he cooking for you every day, given that you do so much more work than him? You appear far more grown up and mature than your husband, who still seems to want a mommy to take care of him. I'm sorry to tell you this, but this will not get any better. You will continue to mature and realize just how much of an immature brat he is. This is who he is. Why did you choose to get married so young? And why to this guy? How did he show before marriage that he was a capable, caring, empathetic life partner? Comment 2. Why? Why do you do all the cooking and chores even though you have a job and school? Why? I don't understand women who put up with being maids. He doesn't love you. No one who loves you is okay with you doing everything. My advice is to tell him he has to start being an actual partner, that you're not his mommy, and you're not going to clean and cook for him anymore. That if he doesn't pick up half the load, you and he are done. If you don't, then this is your life. And when you have kids, you'll be doing all the parenting too. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after my husband didn't show up that night, I decided to give him another day. I thought maybe he needed more time to process everything. But the next day, he still didn't come home. I was starting to feel really frustrated and hurt. I had a lot of schoolwork and work responsibilities piling up, and the emotional stress was just making everything worse. I decided to text him, asking if he planned on coming home to talk. He replied with a simple, "I'm still thinking." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just that. The following day, I had a major project due for my engineering class. I was up all night working on it, and I barely got any sleep. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I couldn't focus on my work because all I could think about was how my husband didn't seem to care about fixing our relationship. I decided to take a break and went for a walk to clear my head. While I was out, I got a call from my mother-in-law. She asked if everything was okay because my husband had been staying with them and seemed really down. I didn't want to get into the details with her, so I just said we were having some issues and needed some space. When I got back home, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was from my husband. He wrote that he was sorry for not being there for me and that he needed some time to figure things out. He said he felt overwhelmed by everything and didn't know how to handle it. He also mentioned that he would be staying at his parents' house for a while to give us both some space. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. At least he acknowledged that there was a problem. But it hurt that he chose to run away instead of facing it with me. That night, I decided to make the pasta dish I had been excited about. I needed something to lift my spirits, and cooking has always been therapeutic for me. As I was preparing the ingredients, I started thinking about our relationship and how things had gotten to this point. I realized that I had been doing everything to keep our lives running smoothly, but I hadn't been taking care of myself. I was always putting his needs first, and it was taking a toll on me. The next day, I had a long conversation with my best friend. She reminded me that I deserved to be treated with respect and that it was okay to ask for help. She also suggested that I take some time to focus on myself and my own needs. I decided to take her advice and started setting some boundaries. I made a list of things that I needed from my husband if we were going to make this work. I needed him to help with the house chores, to be more understanding of my workload, and to show more appreciation for the things I do. I texted my husband and asked if we could meet to talk. He agreed, and we decided to meet at a coffee shop near his parents' house. When we sat down, I could see that he was nervous. I started by telling him how I felt and what I needed from him. I explained that I couldn't keep doing everything on my own and that I needed him to step up. He listened quietly and then apologized for not being there for me. He said he didn't realize how much I was struggling and that he wanted to make things right. We talked for a long time, and it felt like we were finally getting somewhere. He agreed to help more around the house and to be more supportive of my workload. We also decided to set aside some time each week to talk about our feelings and any issues that might come up. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As we were leaving the coffee shop, he mentioned that he had been feeling a lot of pressure from his job and that he didn't know how to handle it. He said he felt like he was failing as a husband and that he didn't want to let me down. I told him that we were a team and that we needed to support each other. It was a moment of vulnerability that I hadn't seen from him in a long time, and it made me realize that he was struggling too. Over the next few days, we started working on our relationship. He came home and began helping with the chores. He even cooked dinner one night, which was a big step for him. We had our first weekly check-in, and it felt good to talk openly about our feelings. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension, but we were making progress. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, he told me about a conversation he had with his father. His dad had reminded him of a time when his parents went through a rough patch and how they had to work together to get through it. It made him realize that he needed to put in the effort to make our marriage work. It was a small anecdote, but it showed me that he was committed to making things better. Looking back, I realized that we both had a lot of growing to do. We needed to learn how to communicate better and to support each other. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was hopeful that we could get through it together. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to change my last name and causing a rift before my wedding? A while ago, my fiancé and I discussed how we would go about me changing my last name once we get married. He really wants me to have his last name, as it is the traditional thing to do. And he wants us as a family to share the same name, which I understand. My entire life, I've always known I don't want to change my name because I love my name, my family's history, and it feels like a big part of myself and who I am. It's taken a long time for me to accept who I am, and my last name feels like a part of me I don't want to change. As a middle ground, we decided I would hyphenate my last name. He will not change his last name because he thinks socially it looks weird and he's all about keeping with the norm. If it weren't for the social aspect, he would have done it. It's getting closer to our wedding now, and I still wish I could just keep my last name rather than change it, but I will for him. I'm in medical school becoming a doctor, and being called Doctor, my last name, has been a dream of mine. My last name is also unique and distinguishes me from other doctors. He has a very common last name. I know if I hyphenate, I can still be called Doctor, my last name, but I do wish I could just keep my last name by itself. Should I just accept this and accept the middle ground decision we made, even if I end up not liking it in the future? To add, I think a lot of comments are seeing him negatively out of proportion because of this one thing. He's had to make compromises for me throughout our relationship as well. For example, I can't travel much in medical school and we live in different cities. Almost every weekend he'd drive down to see me. I don't know where I'm going to match into residency, and he's going to follow me wherever I go. He didn't care to have a big wedding, but is doing so because I wanted to. He's moving in with me after the wedding, even though it probably would have been better for him to stay at his current job. He's not religious, but I am, and he is very respectful of my religion's traditions. He's always been very accommodating and understanding of my school situation, and is extremely supportive. We have a great relationship for over 5.5 years, and this last name situation is really the first fundamental difference we have had, which is why this situation has me confused. I've always told myself growing up I'd never want to change my name, but I also love him very much, and he's been nothing but kind to me, so wouldn't want to hurt him either. About the kids situation. When we talked about me hyphenating my name, I said it was perfectly fine for the kids, if we have any, to take his last name. And if I hyphenated, he isn't going to hyphenate his. About his desires. I'm not 100% sure if there's more reasoning behind why he wants me to take his name so badly. The social norms thing was a big topic in our conversation, but he seemed a bit sad and hurt about the idea of us not having the same name. So I believe it stems in us joining as one under marriage. The last few times we discussed this, it got a bit heated, I think, because we were both strong in our beliefs, but I definitely need to talk to him more about it. About if this is a deal breaker. I know for a fact that this is not a deal breaker, as he mentioned. It wasn't when we were deciding if I hyphenate my name. When I said yes to hyphenating my name, I did so for his sake because I felt bad. But deep down, I know I would prefer to keep my name. If I stuck to my ground, he would look the other way and try to get over it. I just feel bad for making him feel that way, and I'm unsure if he'd hold any resentment. About using his last name socially. I am completely fine with people calling me his last name socially and around family, with me keeping my name legally. I believe I brought this up when we spoke about it, at least 4 or 5 months ago, but he didn't think it solved anything. I believe he wants it legally changed to be officially under one family name. Follow-up Q. We're getting married really soon and going on our honeymoon immediately after. He's been stressed with the planning and his family, and I don't want to make it worse and ruin our enjoyment. Should I tell him my concerns now before the wedding, or wait after everything's died down? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If you are in medical school and plan to be a doctor, either change your name before you start your residency, or don't change your name at all. Honestly, do you know what a pain in the butt changing your name is? Don't do it if you don't want to. It really isn't becoming more common for women to keep their maiden names, especially if they have already established a career with that name. Even more so with a professional degree. Comment 2. Don't unalive your dream. Your instinct is telling you that you won't be happy with this decision long term. And it's not a compromise if you're the only one doing the compromising. You should not be getting married if you can't come to a happy resolution to this. And that means for both of you. You are taking on all the burden of changing your name while he gets his traditional thing with none of the sacrifice. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, 2 weeks ago, I decided to bring up my concerns about the last name situation with my fiancé. I thought it was better to address it before the wedding rather than let it fester. We were sitting on the couch, and I just blurted it out. I told him that I was still struggling with the idea of hyphenating my last name, and that I really wanted to keep my name as it is. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. He didn't say anything at first, which made me even more nervous. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. He said he understood where I was coming from, but that it was important to him for us to share a family name. He mentioned that he had been thinking about it a lot too, and that he felt like we were at an impasse. He asked me if I was willing to compromise in any other way, but I couldn't think of anything that would make both of us happy. The next few days were tense. We tried to go about our normal routines, but there was this underlying tension that neither of us could ignore. I could tell he was upset, and I felt guilty for bringing it up so close to the wedding. But I also knew that I couldn't go through with something that didn't feel right to me. One evening, we had a particularly heated argument. He accused me of not caring about our future together and said that if I couldn't make this one compromise, maybe we weren't meant to be. That hit me hard. I started to question everything. Was I being selfish? Was I putting my own desires above our relationship? But then I remembered all the sacrifices I had made for him too. And I realized that this wasn't just about a name. It was about my identity and my sense of self. In the middle of all this, I got a call from my mom. She could tell something was wrong and asked me what was going on. I broke down and told her everything. She listened patiently, then said something that really stuck with me. She said, "You have to be true to yourself. If you compromise on something this important, you'll end up resenting him, and that's not fair to either of you." That conversation gave me the courage to have one final talk with my fiancé. I told him that I loved him more than anything, but I couldn't go through with changing my name. I explained that it wasn't just about tradition or social norms for me. It was about my identity and my dreams. I told him that I was willing to find another way to show our unity, but I couldn't give up my name. He was quiet for a long time, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Finally, he said that he needed some time to think. He packed a bag and went to stay with a friend for a few days. Those were some of the longest days of my life. I kept replaying our conversations in my head, wondering if I'd made the right choice. While he was gone, I had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship. I thought about all the good times we had shared and all the challenges we had overcome together. I realized that this was just another challenge, and if we could get through this, we could get through anything. But I also knew that I couldn't back down on something that was so important to me. When he finally came back, he looked exhausted. He sat me down and said that he had done a lot of thinking. He told me that he still wanted us to share a family name, but he understood that it wasn't fair to ask me to give up something that was so important to me. He suggested that we both hyphenate our names as a way to show our unity while still respecting each other's identities. I was surprised by his suggestion, but also relieved. It felt like a true compromise, one that we could both live with. We talked about it some more and decided that this was the best solution for us. It wasn't the traditional route, but it felt right for us. The fallout from this decision was mixed. His family was a bit taken aback when we told them, but they eventually came around. My family was supportive, as always. The wedding went off without a hitch, and our honeymoon was amazing. We both felt a sense of relief, knowing that we had navigated this challenge together. Looking back, I realized that this whole situation had brought us closer. It forced us to really communicate and understand each other's perspectives. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. We learned that our relationship is strong enough to withstand even the toughest challenges. As for the backstory, I think it's important to mention that my fiancé comes from a very traditional family. His parents have been married for over 30 years, and they both took their family names very seriously. I think a lot of his initial resistance came from wanting to honor that tradition. On the other hand, my family has always been more progressive. My parents encouraged me to be independent and to value my own identity. I think that's why this issue was so important to me. In the end, we found a way to honor both of our backgrounds while still staying true to ourselves. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for cutting off my sister-in-law after she claimed my husband is gay? A month ago, my sister-in-law came to my house with her daughter. I also have a 6-month-old baby. Anyways, everything was going pretty normal. We talked, made dinner, and vented to each other about normal marriage life stuff. Then, things took a turn. My husband and I moved into our house 6 months prior to this visit with my sister-in-law. So literally 1 week after I gave birth, we moved into this house. My husband works a lot, so the majority of caring for our baby is on me. And that's okay. But for the first 3, maybe 4 months, I was really in the trenches. So anyway, she starts to tell me that she and my husband's brother are very upset with us because we haven't invited them over for dinner yet. Huh? So at this point, I'm just letting her vent on why she's upset with us, even though they live 20-some minutes away and have never asked to come see their new nephew, or she just doesn't talk to me at all. LOL, this visit was rare, by the way. It was really out of the blue. Anyways, she's going on that she's pissed because I haven't cooked dinner for her family yet. Okay, sorry. I've been extremely overwhelmed with my baby, first-time mom, and his medical issues and bills and just day-to-day life. I honestly haven't even thought of it. I also struggled with postpartum depression pretty badly, and I was on medication for it. It was literally the last thing on my mind. So I apologized. Then she starts to tell me that a week prior, at her BBQ, that my husband and I were at, that she and her husband, my husband's brother, thought my husband looked depressed. I was honestly confused because I've never noticed that, and my husband and I really talk about everything, and I was just surprised she said that. I asked her, why do they think he seems depressed? And she says, before I tell you, you have to promise me you won't tell your husband. So now I am terrified, anxious, curious, all of the above. And I told her I promised I wouldn't say anything. Then, in front of her daughter, who is almost 10 years old, she starts to tell me that she and my brother-in-law think that my husband is depressed because he is actually gay and can't live his truth. Then, word for word, she told me, we honestly think he married you and had a baby with you as a front. Holy shit, what? So now I'm actually feeling weird. She went into detail that she thinks my husband and his best friend for over 10 years, who is married with children, are having or were having a secret relationship. What? My sister-in-law has known my husband for over 15 years. How could she say this to me after everything I've been through? Even if it was true, why? You know what I mean? So she left my house, and I honestly was overthinking it for days before I finally told my husband. He is extremely upset. My brother-in-law is the type of man that if I would have said that to his wife about him, he would have come for my throat. My husband and I decided not to say anything yet, but it's getting hard. It has been about a month. After she left my house that night, she has not said a word to me since. Like, how do you lay that on someone and go mute? We're family? I've been married to my husband almost 3 years now, and I absolutely believe him, but that's beside the point. I need to know what is the correct way to confront them. I'm sorry, but you cannot come into my house and tell me my entire life is fake. Also, I want to add a week ago, it was my sister-in-law and brother-in-law's other child's birthday. The party was outside and 94 degrees out. I didn't feel comfortable having my baby outside in that heat. When we told them that and that we weren't coming to the party because of that, they told us they didn't give a FK if we came and hung up the phone and haven't said a word since. My husband is pissed and hurt, and so am I, and I'm so tired of letting things slide with his family. How do my husband and I navigate this issue? Thanks. Now for an update. My husband will be saying something to his brother soon. I will update everyone. I am cutting off my sister-in-law completely. I will update everyone who wants to know when it happens and what exactly does happen. Thank you for all the advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. How do you handle it? Either you both say nothing and have minimal contact with the sister-in-law, or your husband has to talk to his brother. You need to stay out of it. In any case, I would avoid all contact with the sister-in-law as minimal as possible. As of now, you cannot be sure your brother-in-law even knows she was there. Never mind what she said. So as of right now, she is the problem. It's up to your husband if he feels comfortable broaching that issue with his brother. Comment 2. Don't do anything. Just go no contact with the sister-in-law and watch your husband more closely over the next year. Soon it'll be clear if she's just a vindictive troublemaker mad at you for not showing up to the party, or if your husband is hiding something, or both. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So my husband finally confronted his brother. It was a tense conversation, to say the least. My husband started by asking his brother why they thought he was depressed. His brother seemed taken aback and tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding. But my husband pressed on, mentioning the specific things his sister-in-law had said. At first, his brother denied everything, but then he admitted that they had been concerned about him. He said they were just worried and didn't mean to cause any trouble. My husband was furious and told him that if they were truly concerned, they should have come to him directly instead of spreading such hurtful rumors. During this confrontation, my sister-in-law walked in and tried to defend herself, saying she was just looking out for her brother. My husband told her that if she really cared, she wouldn't have gone behind his back and said such things to me. She started crying and said she didn't mean to hurt anyone. But my husband wasn't having it. He told her that she had crossed a line and that he needed some space from them. After that, we decided to take a break from his family. We didn't attend any family gatherings, and we stopped answering their calls. It was hard, especially because we were so used to being involved in family events, but we needed to protect our peace. In the meantime, I started noticing some changes in my husband. He seemed more withdrawn and less communicative. I asked him if he was okay, and he said he was just stressed about the whole situation. I tried to be supportive and give him space, but it was hard not to worry. A few days later, my husband's best friend came over. They talked for hours, and I could hear bits and pieces of their conversation. It seemed like my husband was opening up to him about everything that had happened. After his friend left, my husband seemed a bit more at ease. He told me that his friend had reassured him that he was doing the right thing by setting boundaries with his family. But then, something unexpected happened. My sister-in-law showed up at our house unannounced. She was visibly upset and begged to talk to me. I was hesitant, but I let her in. She apologized profusely for everything she had said and done. She admitted that she'd been projecting her own insecurities onto my husband, and that she was struggling with her own issues. She said she was going through a rough patch in her marriage, and had taken it out on us. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I felt sorry for her, but on the other hand, I was still hurt by her actions. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, it would take time for me to trust her again. She seemed to understand and said she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. After she left, I talked to my husband about what had happened. He was surprised that she had come over and apologized. We decided to give her some time to prove herself, but we agreed that we needed to keep our distance for now. In the following days, my husband and I had some deep conversations about our relationship and our future. We talked about how we could support each other better and how we could strengthen our bond. It was a tough but necessary conversation, and it brought us closer together. As for my sister-in-law, she started going to therapy to work on her issues. She reached out to us a few times to check in and see how we were doing. While we were still cautious, we appreciated her efforts to make amends. One day, my husband received a letter from his brother. In it, he apologized for everything that had happened and admitted that he had been wrong. He said he missed his brother and wanted to make things right. My husband was touched by the letter, but he wasn't ready to forgive and forget just yet. He decided to take things slow and see how his brother's actions matched his words. In the meantime, we focused on our little family. Our baby was growing and thriving, and we wanted to create a positive and loving environment for him. We spent more time together as a family and made an effort to communicate openly and honestly. Looking back, this whole ordeal was a wake-up call for us. It made us realize the importance of setting boundaries and protecting our peace. It also showed us the value of open communication and mutual support in a relationship. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.